Hello everybody, Steve here, and today I got something a little different for me. Some of you are kind of used to and know what these are. Of course, these are just disc detainer locks, and I have a couple of them because I'm still kind of new with these disc detainer locks, and so quick backstory is that I kind of I got a few of these last year and was planning on getting into them, but kind of got started and not really getting going. But so to get started, what I did was I bought a few little a couple little disc detainer locks, and then I bought a cheap Chinese disc detainer lock pick, and I'm like, well, I think that's going to get me started, so I can at least start, and then I can get some better tools in the future. But I kind of got away from that, kind of got sidetracked with a bunch of other stuff, and I'm realizing that it's been a year since I really started doing that. So I actually contacted Chris Capune the other day, and he kind of helped get me some pointers and things like that, so I can get started back into these disc detainer locks. So to start out from the very beginning, just got a couple of them. This is got a couple cheap Chinese locks. This is the Angio Bio, I think that's how it is, a little 40 millimeter disc detainer lock pick. I got that to start out with. And then I have, of course, when you buy these unities, you get them in a pair, two at a time. So I got two of these unities, and this is the other one. And then I got a little Zarker J445S, and so a couple different ones to start with. And then I did get the cheap Chinese lockpick. And so the one thing that kind of was a stumbling block for me in the past was the fact that as soon as I started playing around with it, the tip busted. And so going through and learning a little bit like that, I found a lot of people were making their own tips by just getting these ejector pins. Mold ejector pins is what they call them. This is 1.5 millimeter, and they take these things and shape the end in order to make a tip. So I'll show a little bit about this in a second. And the next thing was, as soon as I made my tip, the little handle that I had that came with didn't have a hole that went all the way through, so I started trying to drill a hole all the way through, busted the drill bit and basically ruined that. And so then I went through some stuff in my toolbox and found this little handle for a tool and turned it into the handle for it. So I basically have taken this lockpick and fixed it basically to make it work. And so to get started, I took this unity apart, because the nice thing about these unities is that you can take them apart. So I took this one apart. These are both keyed the same. Took this one apart so we can kind of see what it is, see what's going on. And I got my ejector pins. I got this. And so first of all, since I don't have a pinning tray for disc detainer locks, I just took a piece of blue tape and painter's tape and just put them on here so they wouldn't move around and disappear on me. And these are exactly how I took them out, starting with pin 1, and then the spacer, or not pin, but disc 1, and the spacer, disc 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So there's 7 disc, and of course 6 spacers, 6 spacers. And these ones, kind of the way that they're way that they stamp out the metal makes them kind of rounded on one side, and so some of them were turned different ways with a spacer. So I think, if I remember seeing Chris talk about these in the past, is that they all should be with the rounded part up. So I think some of these spacers were actually upside down, but I mean the lock still worked. But anyway, we'll fix that. So the first thing that we need to understand is the fact that, of course, we have, even though all these keys look the same, they are a little bit different. Some are shorter, smaller. Some have a longer, how do you say that, a deeper, the first disc is deeper than others, I should say. Also, depending on the lock, some of the spacing here for the bitting might be a little different. And also the shape of the key with little, what do you call that, warding or whatever, might be different too. So kind of a lot of differences. So that's why it's kind of hard to have a generic pick for these. So a lot of people will make several tips depending on the lock they're using. So when I did this one, I kind of shaped it after the Unity one, which kind of looks like a little bow tie. It has little slots down the center, and then it has the bitting, and I kind of modeled that after that, kind of made it a little bow tie. I don't know how well you can see that. There we go. How's that? So I made it kind of a little bow tie type thing, or dog bone, however you want to say it. And then then I didn't make any modifications to the nose here. And so the biggest things is making sure that these fit in here. So if I take this first disc, it's stuck to that. The tape is doing its job. So if you notice, we got that hole that's in the center, and so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this tip to fit into that hole. And as you can tell, mine is a little bit smaller, but that's okay. That means it can go in and out easier. And the next thing is making sure that the thickness is about the same or smaller. So if I measure the thickness of the disc here in empirical units, it's 48 thousandths or 47 thousandths of an inch thick, and my tip here, I made it about 41. So I mean, it could make it a little bit thinner, but I mean, I think that's okay. It still does this job. And then the next thing is the fact that when you go from one disc to the other, that's where the spacer comes in. You're sometimes there's a space between the discs. So obviously by having the spacer in there, and then that it gives you a spot to move, turn your pick around while you're switching to the other disc. And I don't know why it's out of focus now, but probably because I was zooming in real quick. So the other thing to notice is the fact that when we look at these discs, we have the center portion, which is where the pick would be going through. So obviously on the first disc there, it has that dog bone look, and then after that it's just a square center. The next thing you notice is that there's a little piece on this side, And I don't know why it's a little different on each disc. I don't know, but maybe that's why it's something with the Unity. I don't know. But anyway, that kind of limits the range that these discs will turn in the lock. And then you'll also notice how there's a notch in one spot over here, kind of in between the 3 o'clock position and the 12 o'clock position, or thereabouts. So that is the gate that the sidebar will go into when it gets into the correct position. So that notch would correspond to the bitting on the key, and that would tell you according or what the pin height is, or the cut is. Like a 0 cut would be way over in the closer to the 3 o'clock position, and then you have the 1 and 2 and 3 and so on and so forth, different angles. And so what happens is when you put your pick in here, or the key, the key will go in there, and then it will turn that disc. As you turn the key, then it will the bitting will go in between. So see how to explain it. So when the key goes into the slot and turns, then depending on the bitting on the key, then it will turn each disc a certain amount, and the angle on the bitting and the notch will, and the bitting on the key and the notch need to match in order to get it to turn that disc to the right spot. So obviously with this one, see how that turns quite a bit in there. It's kind of hard to see a little bit, but it will turn before it turns quite a bit before it starts to turn the disc. And that's just because that's a deeper cut. And then of course the ones that aren't very deep, the 0 cuts, they'll just start turning it immediately. So anyway, I will be putting that lock back together, and so the first thing that we do is, after we kind of get a little idea on how that works, we can kind of see into the core itself. And here is the actual sidebar. It's just a metal rod, really. And so if we look, the core there, and then there's kind of like a sleeve, and we have on the one side we have this slot here where the sidebar fits in, and the other side it looks like it's cut out here, and that's where the other part of the disc is, that kind of limits the travel so that it doesn't turn too much. And once all these gates are lined up, then that sidebar will come out of this slot and slide into those gates, and then it will allow the lock to turn and open. And so I'm sure you guys have seen or heard the explanation from others. Hopefully that makes sense maybe to some people, I don't know, but so once we kind of understand the mechanics of how these locks works, then we can start looking at how to pick them and how to, and a lot of times what people will do is they will take their tool and they will set it up either I know this one has screws and I can move this up and down, so I move that nose in and out, and that way that can reach in deeper to some locks. Like this Unity is a lot deeper than that cheap Chinese, and even the Zarker's even shallower. You can see how deep those are. So obviously what I want to do is what I do is I adjust this nose so that it will reach in and turn only the first disc. And so then I'm making it so it doesn't go too deep to hit the other disc, and not too shallow, so that make sure it catches it. And then what I've done is, if I'm switching to a different lock, then I will loosen these screws up and slide this down so that it doesn't, so that it can reach the shallower ones and doesn't turn the other disc. And there are some people that will, with different tools and stuff like that, they'll use spacers or different things like that to kind of help to kind of do the same thing, and also to make that so that this tool is sitting flat up against the lock. That way it doesn't rotate and move around as you're picking, and then you can kind of keep it more stable. And so that's the first thing I've done, is make sure that I adjust this nose so that it will just turn that first disc. And then I will adjust the length of the tip to make sure that it reaches all the way to the back of the lock. And that way it reaches all the disc. And so that's the adjustments I make with my tool. Now, as far as picking goes, what we do first is we try to get all these discs turned to a known position. And I was just using this end that I got off of a lock. What do you call that? I can't even think now. Anyway, I just found this and I stuck it in. I'm like, oh, that works. That's a pretty good size. Other people just use a key blank that's not cut to do the same thing. This is just the way that I found works for me. So that's what I've been doing. And I've actually seen people turn it counterclockwise all the time, and I've seen people turn it clockwise all the way. And I think the one that I've seen works the best for me so far, as I've been trying to play with these, is to turn all the discs to the right, to counterclockwise, before inserting the tool. And then when I turn the tool, then I'm tensioning that first disc to the 0 position, and then I will be going through here and turning each disc individually. And since I have it set to a 0 position, and I'm turning that first disc to 0 clockwise, then I will be rotating all these discs counterclockwise. And sometimes I have to kind of go back and forth to turn them in order to get it set into the gate right. So I know this has been a long, almost 20 minutes of rambling, but I kind of wanted to give a little bit of an introduction on what I've been, my kind of start into these disc detainer locks. And so I've been able to play around and get this Unity open a few times. Played around with this cheap Chinese one, and the Anajai Bro, or however you say it. I haven't been able to get that one, and I haven't tried the Zarker yet, but so I have been able to get this Unity open a couple times, so raw, so I'm going to do another video on that. But anyway, I just wanted to bring these out and kind of show you a little bit of what I've been doing with these, and hopefully I didn't ramble on and bore anybody too much. Hopefully I've helped people, and obviously, since I'm still learning, I might not get everything right, and there might be things that I need to do differently. But so if you do have any suggestions or comments or anything, make sure you leave them below and make sure you let me know. But I do appreciate you guys watching and sticking with me for this last 20 minutes or so, and make sure that you are subscribed and you leave a like and leave comments down below. And thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.